Ken, see if yeah, people are coming back. Good. So we left off here. Here is the next slide is one where this scheme of symmetric encryption is explained again. I'm gonna skip over that because it's a lot of technical detail that I don't think is important at this point. What I want you to take away out of this is that the underlying primitives, as we say, the underlying parts, the building blocks around which encryption is built, are based on math, on mathematical formulas, procedures, and mathematical formulas and algorithms by which are translated in protocols that computers can understand and talk to each other, and that all makes that work. And there are not a gazillion ways of math to be able to do this. There are a couple of forms, but you cannot just change the math to make something work. That's sort of the underlying thing. And if you look at encryption as a system, which we already did, we talked a little bit about if I send you a message, it goes via a channel. Where does the encryption take place? There are a number of things that are important. You have to have reliable input. If you type something on your phone, you want to make sure that there's nothing on your phone that changes the input to the encryption mechanism. And the same thing is that once you have enciphered it, once you have ciphertext, encrypted it, and you send it, you don't want people to mess it up. Because if you mess it up, it becomes unreadable. You want to make sure that the key storage, storing your private key, is done securely. You want to make sure that your key management, James getting my public key, is done in a way so that people can understand who is who. So those are aspects of key management. And this whole system in which this takes place, whether this is a computer, your phone, or something, needs to be secure. There needs to be system integrity in place. It's really important to think of all those components as being critical for a secure system. It's not only enough to have the math and the computer programs to do the math, but you also want to understand that the computer programs behave correctly, that there is no sniffing software on your computer. And in fact, this might be a good example. One of the things that came in the Netherlands has frankly, a fairly bad reputation if it comes to drug crime. It's the biggest port for drug transport, I think, in the world even. That means that there's a lot of drug trade in the Netherlands. And the Dutch police, of course, have this as their prime interest because there's all kinds of related crime that comes with that. And one of the things that the Dutch police is really good at is breaking into these encryption systems that were built by criminals. Criminals don't trust anything. They don't trust the things that they can get off the shelf. They don't trust Signal. They don't trust WhatsApp. They don't trust any of that. So they built their own encryption systems. And building your own system is always difficult. To get all these pieces right is incredibly hard. And that's how the Dutch National Police Force and also French police forces have collaborated to break into several of these systems. The latest one being EncroChat. If you Google search for that, you probably find the stories. And with EncroChat, they managed to sit in the system and actually read with the criminals and send everything back to home and store it. And they only interfered with the system when it was very clear that somebody was about to get killed. So building this is incredibly hard. And when we talk about the ways that law, because this is a big policy question, I understand. In order to make sure that you can break into criminal communication or terrorist communication or child abuse communication, what you want to do is basically read along. But breaking encryption in a general way is like breaking math in a general way. And it's, you break everything for everybody else. And it means that somebody in the Netherlands needs to be able to trust the governance and policy procedures in Belgium, because encryption systems are built globally. So creating backdoors in encryption based on one single country's needs will break encryption all over the globe. And that's bad. But what police authorities can do is try to break into these systems, find bugs, exploit those bugs. I think that's fair game. And that's fair game when it's encryption systems built by criminals. It's much more tricky when you talk about exploiting bugs in phones to listen along with criminals or terrorists or enemies of the state. Yesterday, I gave notice about a bug in Apple iPhones. The Pegasus system built by NGO, I forgot, NSO. Believe that's an Israeli company, isn't it? Yeah. And these guys make a business, NSO makes a business of exploiting bugs in systems like the iPhone to be able to read messages. They basically hack your iPhone and get paid by nation states. And in order to do that, they get bugs from the markets, the dark markets where bugs are sold, vulnerabilities are sold. And so when you set up a CERT, a CCERT in your country, it's also good to think as a country what to do with vulnerabilities that are discovered in your country. There are two things you can do. You can say, I'm going to keep the bug to myself. I'm going to give it to my security apparatus, so to speak, so they can exploit that bug and create means to break in infrastructure when they need that, either for military purposes or law enforcement purposes or what have you. Or they can decide to contact the vendor and say, vendor, please fix this bug. And as a nation state, and this should be in any cybersecurity strategy, I think, you should have a so-called vulnerabilities equities process, where as a country with all stakeholders, you decide what is important. What is the threshold for keeping it or making sure that it's fixed in the common interest? Because that bug might also be discovered somewhere else and used against you. And it's in your interest of having the bug fixed. So if you think of encryption as a system, you think about vulnerabilities. And when you think about vulnerabilities, you come in this general public policy issue of vulnerability equities. Disclosure, vulnerability, yeah. I have been a member of a commission called the Global Commission on the Stability of Cyberspace. And this was one of the recommendations we came out with. That was a multi-stakeholder platform, a multi-stakeholder commission with all kinds of people, technologists like myself, but also ex-ministers, intelligence people, professors in international law, really broad. And one of the things that we came out with was that the recommendation that states should have vulnerabilities equities process. I'm going to skip the game. So I already also talked about this. You know, this is sort of the description that I gave in the beginning. When do we use encryption in our daily life? Well, basically any moment of the day. And if we're not using it, encryption, we probably should. This is again a repetition, but you know, the principle of learning is repetition. So I'm going to skip this slide. So I already talked about Julius Caesar and the Caesar secret. Now this is nice. This is the way that it works. What you do is basically your key is a number, and your key is the number of places that a word shifts in the alphabet. So you have the alphabet, and if I say the number 3 is my key, then the joint algorithm that we have between us is that if I send a message, I jump 3 letters in the alphabet and replace my original letter by that letter. And if James receives it, he subtracts 3. So the A jumps 3 letters forward in the Roman alphabet and gets a D. The S becomes a V, now, and so on and so forth. So you've got this encrypted text, which doesn't make sense at all. But if you do statistic analysis on this, then you start counting the E's, which are, in this case, the H, and you will see that there's a number of H's here, and so on and so forth. So this is a very primitive way of doing encryption. But what is important here, what is the important lesson behind here, is that if you really, really want to build a secure system, then the algorithm, and the algorithm in this case, jump 3 letters or jump X letters forward, a number of letters forward, is completely public. And everybody can audit the mechanism and make sure that it's secure. And all the security relies on the key, in this case, the number 3. And when people audit this algorithm, they can be sure that, you know, they will see there's statistical analysis and so on and so forth possible. So if we again look at the math and the mathematicians that do this work and the people who make implementations, the best encryption software and algorithms are the ones that are publicly available and under scrutiny for many, many years by the community, usually academics. Like there is a working group in the IETF. The IETF is the standards organization for the internet. The internet uses lots of cryptography math in their protocols, and there is a crypto research forum within the IETF that talks about the implementations of the math into these protocols and tries to assess where things can go wrong, and they give guidance. So only rely on the secrecy of the key and make sure that your algorithm is always open to public scrutiny. The more people look at your algorithm, the more secure it becomes. There's never, as a government, never try to invent your own cryptography. Don't do it. There are agencies, smart agencies, that will break your homemade encryption. Oh, I talked about this. So, couple of myths. because I'm realizing we're sort of at the end of the day and want to wrap this up in, say, 15 to 13 minutes. Why would I going to use encryption? I'm not important. Nobody is going to attack me. You know, who cares about me? Well, I can guarantee you everybody has secrets. Everybody knows something. And the more technology that we use, the more secrets we have. If only my banking login credentials. Everybody who is on the internet probably has something to hide, even though a lot of people will volunteer their deepest secrets to the internet, but that's more a social problem. So, few things you might hear. If I use data encryption, that reduces my speed. I cannot do my work. Everything becomes very slow. No, that's not the case. The way that encryption works today is that it's fast. Computers are fast, and everything just works. And I realized that there is a question on the Zoom, which I will attend to in a bit. Using encryption on websites slows down browsing. That is only at the moment you connect to that website. After you did that, everything is hunky-dunky fast. There's always a little bit of negotiations, which causes a little bit of slowdown, but not enough to see that to weigh against the benefits that encryption has. And if you look at the way that encryption has grown, as used on the internet, it has grown significantly. It's above, I think it's close to 90 or even over 90%. If you don't encrypt your web traffic to your pages, you know, with a little padlock, you're probably doing something wrong. The reason why that works now is that there is a certification authority which has made certification of websites free, no cost, and highly automated. That certification called authority is Let's Encrypt. We have been one of their sponsors for very, very many years. And I think that's one of the best things that happened to the internet. Another thing, mobile phones don't need antivirus, not really an encryption thing, more a privacy thing or more a security thing. But remember, mobile phones are a system too. So you want to keep them secure from any vulnerabilities and anybody, you know, trying to hack your phone. Some mobile phone systems are more secure than others. Apple is sort of top of bill, still gets hacked. Don't use old phones, but you need to prevent your machines. And you need to do that with all available means. If you use encryption, you still are vulnerable to all kinds of risks. You can be hacked, everything can be done to you. But if you use encryption and you are hacked and your data is stored in an encrypted format and it's being extracted, then the harm probably doesn't matter so much. If you have data encrypted at rest, again, to protect yourself, and somebody comes in to ransomware you, they can still do that too. You can encrypt encrypted data again. So it's not the end of all security. No, not at all. Actually, in order to do it well, you need more. There was something that I wanted to say and I completely forgot, but let me look at the question that was on Zoom. There is a question that from Raad Altal, who says, what are the general security requirements that organizations must meet to protect personal data? I can't give that answer. There's probably a lot of things that you need to do to protect personal data. There's policies that you need in place. There is data minimization that you need to in place. So don't store data, private data of people that you don't need. Those are things that you can do to reduce the privacy footprint. But of course, encryption is one of the things in that tool bag of protecting private data. If you have private data, you best encrypt it so that if a drive is stolen or people hack into your infrastructure, they don't get it. So this is data at rest encryption. So this is a point that this is sort of the last block of the workshop. This is about the public policy issues that we are engaged in as the Internet Society. And there is a little bit of we have a position here, and you will clearly hear that position. Law enforcement wants to access devices and online platform to stop the spread of terrorist and child abuse content. This is a thing that happens, a discussion that happens in many jurisdictions. It happens in the US. It is raging in the UK at the moment with some latest developments, I believe, at the moment. Brazil, India, there are many places in the world where authorities say, this is the theme that was introduced by the FBI, we are going dark. We have no way to look at content because everything is encrypted. When that was said the first time, when people started encrypted, then the head of the NSA, a certain admiral, actually said, or maybe he was the ex-head, but he said on television, we don't need encryption. We kill people based on metadata. And what does that mean? Well, metadata is the data that is not encrypted. And metadata is the data that you can get from looking at statistical traffic patterns. For instance, if I send James a message, I can encrypt that message, but it still needs to go to James. So I still need to put his name on the envelope or the IP address of his computer. So law enforcement can see that we talk to each other. So they can build a network and see that James is talking to his friends and who those friends are. That's metadata. And yesterday, during the quantum, during the artificial intelligence talk, it was said that by looking at the traffic patterns and by learning traffic patterns on a network, we can learn a lot about the content of packages. We can, for instance, see that's a voice message or that it's a control message or something. So there's a lot of things that people can learn from metadata. What the question now is from law enforcement is, for instance, the question comes in various forms. But the problem, I think, is that when it comes back to the zero trust principle by which encryption on the internet is designed. It's designed in a way that you don't have to trust, you only have to trust the math. And you don't have to trust any procedure. You don't have to process the goodwill of any party involved in the system. You don't have to trust that the information remains between you know, 50,000 law enforcement officers or something. So in that encryption debate, we see a lot of proposals being made that have to do with the spread of terrorist or child abuse content. One of these methods is traceability. Suppose that I send a message and it's being replicated. What if it could be sort of earmarked or have a seal that it comes from me, then you know it could be traced back to myself. Well, that will of course break end-to-end encryption and have security vulnerabilities, in the sense that you will always be able to trace back who said what in a conversation. And in places where you have people that want to remain secure and free to say something, that is going to be problematic. Journalists, for instance. Backdoors. Backdoors is the questions that some governments ask from providers to give them access to the secure communication via either a bug in the system or an additional encryption element like a key. Can we get a key so that we can come in? Or by decreasing the quality of the encryption mechanism so that it can be brute forced cracked by throwing computational resources at it by the computers from the state, so to speak. Those type of things, those backdoors, are general provisions in a system that is globally spread. And so what is a backdoor for one government will become the backdoor for hackers and will become the backdoors for other governments as well. So once you have a backdoor, this is a guarantee. You cannot keep these backdoors safe. Once a backdoor is somewhere in a product, somebody else will find that backdoor. I think there's been some examples in the security literature of backdoors that were discovered in attack software and then were taken over by others. So really, the idea of a backdoor, again, in a zero trust environment, in technology that you use globally, you cannot trust the procedures to make sure that this remains with only one party and is always used for good. Key escrow, that's basically methods whereby it's a form of a backdoor whereby the government says, if you want to communicate, give me a key. I think that you referred to that earlier today. Again, exposes consumers and businesses to risk, because if there is a key floating around somewhere, then it might be abused. Let's see, I have two other things. Yes, the Ghost protocol. So this is a proposal that was introduced by GCHQ, the British Security Services, at some point, where they said, what we would like to do is that if somebody has a chat, a group chat, or just a chat on say something like WhatsApp, can you please add us to that chat and not display that we're listening in? So I'm talking to James, and we have somebody who's listening in. And of course, that's exactly the same as completely breaking the trust model that we have. It's not breaking the encryption as such, but breaking the system expectations and thereby completely degrading the trust in those systems.
Violating privacy.
Yeah, it's violating privacy, but it's violating all the expectations that users have. And of course, these type of protocols can also be used by third parties. They can be hacked. They can be, again, you have to trust GCHQ to do this well. And once the method is in the software, that software is used globally. This is the difficult thing about the internet. The internet is a global infrastructure. We were talking about cross-border effects of measures. In this space, everything you do has cross-border effects. And that means that if GCHQ is doing it, it will have an impact on you, on the trustworthiness of the communication in the Arab states. But also, if the Arab states do it, it has impact on the communication that we have in Western Europe, or in Japan, or in Brazil, or, just name it, please. Then there is the method of client-side scanning. That is something that we hear mostly in the context of CSAM. CSAM, sorry, that's child abuse material. This is the recent proposal that is in a UK law proposal at this moment. Client-side scanning is the idea that at the moment that a message is being generated, just before it's encrypted, it's scanned for content. And if the content is, for instance, a depiction of a child, that warning bells are raised. So the phone is fed with information about these are the signals on which you need to fire off a warning. This is potentially a signal. When you see the signal, there's probably a child abuse material on that phone. But of course, there is no guarantees. Again, there's no guarantees of what that signal is. There is also no guarantees that there are no false positives. I mean, it can be a picture of, everybody has taken pictures of their kids with the swimming pool and shared that with their wife while they're on vacation. And it might be that something like that triggers such a sensor. I believe that the phrase that the UK law uses, or the law proposals uses, is something like technical measures. And come again? Feasible technical measures, which do not impact the privacy. I mean, there's all kinds of language around that. And the situation was that, for instance, a company like Signal said, if you are going to impose this law, we're going to leave the country. Because we don't have a feasible technical measure, and you cannot compel us to make something that we don't think is feasible. And they said that because they understand this zero trust environment and the global risks that are imposed if you do that kind of work. The ministry has come back and said we're not going to impose this part of the law yet, and so this discussion is currently ongoing. I think there has been some last moment amendments to this law, but this is a very, very, very present and running public policy debate around encryption. And what I'm trying to get across is two things. First, that, or maybe three things. First, that these public policy issues dealing with terrorist and CSAM content are things that actually matter to everybody in society. And we all understand that. Everybody who's engaged in this debate understands that. Second is that governments are grappling with this responsibility. They're grappling with the trade-off between, it's not a trade-off. It's seeing, because you cannot say this is safety and security, because encryption also keeps children safe. The use of encryption keeps people safe. The abuse of encryption doesn't keep people safe. But public policy authorities are grappling with this issue. There is more encryption easily and publicly available, and that has an impact on the way that we can, eradicate or prosecute behavior that we don't want in society. So people are grappling with that. And the third thing is that the physics don't change. There are a couple of facts that the security community knows that we don't have a good answer to it. So when you say feasible mechanisms, and the security community and the mathematical community, just basically all of science says, this is not feasible in a secure way, yeah, then you have a problem. And the reason why it's not feasible is I hope what I presented during the talk. Encryption is a system based on math, and math is pretty much it works or it doesn't, and designed around zero trust. In other words, designed around not having to trust any individual action, procedure, or policy to be followed. Because we all know that at some point people don't follow policy and procedure. And I think with that, I also have sort of my last slide. You can read this. Yeah, this is my last slide. Sort of related practices, use strong passwords, use messaging apps that end-to-end encrypted, encrypt your devices, encrypt your services, make sure that in your government services you understand where to use encryption, how to protect the data of your peoples. Keep your security systems up to date. Security vulnerabilities, it's important to understand how to deal with them. Also at the state level, how do you use those vulnerabilities if they are found? I would say that if you I would say that if you ever write a vulnerability equities process, then please err on the side of disclosing rather than keeping the bug. Disclosing is in the public interest. That's my strong personal belief. And with that, frankly, I'm exhausted. And I would like to thank you. There's absolute time for questions and discussion, even though I'm exhausted. Oh. Oh, yeah, there's a question to fill in an evaluation service. Oh, yeah, so there's a question to for an evaluation, and I think that you will now show a QR code of that evaluation form. Now, I'm not going to be childish and say you should never scan QR codes, but in this case, I believe it will also be sent around to participants. Yeah. So if you don't want to scan a QR code because you never know what virus you're downloading, wait for the email. Any questions, please? in that case, thank you for your attendance. I hope this was of use, and I wish you a good trip home. Thank you.
Thanks to ISOC, to the Internet Society, for organizing this course. Thank you very much. If there is no question, I think we can say goodbye, and for the next, maybe next workshop next year.